there's a lot here to unpack when it comes to Nigel McGuinness and it comes to Bryan Danielson. One, if you're not a Ring of Honor fan, if you're not somebody that watched the product or are aware of this feud, obviously this has kind of been played out on AEW TV. Nigel McGuinness on commentary is always poking the bear when it comes to Bryan Danielson, the over-the-top heel commentator, especially when it comes to Bryan Danielson. So even if you don't know about the Ring of Honor feud, you know that there's something between Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. That's one thing. Number two, Tommy, you just mentioned it. Hey, he's talking about his theme. He's talking about Final Countdown for Bryan Danielson. He alluded to the wars that he had with Bryan Danielson. Well, right then, the only people that are going to know what you're talking about were people like me that 15, 20 years ago were watching those battles with Ring of Honor between Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. By the way, AEW now owns Ring of Honor. I'm super excited about the match. Like I said, I have to be there. I have to be physically there in the building. Like so many times I was physically there in the building when they would wrestle at Final Battle in the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. I've seen them wrestle together at Basketball City in New York. I've seen them wrestle in Edison, New Jersey. So for me, especially in this area, Queens, New York, I think there's going to be a lot of fans. I actually think this is going to really help boost ticket sales for Grand Slam between Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. So on that note, I'm super excited. I think it's positive. But here's the problem that I have with this. And there's a couple of issues that I have with this, Tommy. One is the whole theme. What's that?
Shocker.
Yeah. And I'm not being a hater here. And I know people are going to say I'm not being a hater.
Let me try to explain you before you say it.
Okay.
You want it to be how it was and how it is special. Correct?
I want to get into how they could make it special, but also how they kind of contradicted themselves.
Okay.
And I got a lot to say, and
No.
I'm going to say it. Here's the thing. First and foremost, I'm excited about Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. You give me that match, like I said, I'm buying a ticket. I want to be there. That match means a lot to me. The one thing I don't understand is how they're giving us Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. And listen, Tommy, this is two-way talk. So if anybody disagrees with me or doesn't like what I have to say, by all means, call in and let's talk about it. I just feel a matchup like this with so much history behind it and things needing to be explained, this needs more than just one Dynamite before we get to Grand Slam in Queens. Because that's all we're going to get before we have this matchup is one Dynamite. And I'm not even sure we're going to get Bryan Danielson for this one Dynamite. Like, I feel like this is a matchup that you could build to. Because it's been 15 years since they've been in the ring together, Tommy. 15 years. To me, the greatest feud in Ring of Honor history, in my opinion. Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson. Classic matchups. But not, like you said, Tommy, not everybody knows about it. Not everybody knows about the history. It happened with Ring of Honor 15 years ago. Now, AEW owns Ring of Honor now. So that means AEW owns all the footage of all these matchups, all these classics that Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness have had together. Imagine the build that you could have for this match. So you have like the chippy commentator with Nigel McGuinness and how he loves to poke the bear with Bryan Danielson. So you have that backdrop. And that's going to be there. But my goodness, Tommy, like how you could dive into the career paths that these two have had together. Nigel McGuinness just said it in the ring last night. The success that you have had, that should have been mine. Well, explain it to me. Let's go step by step. What do you mean by that? I'm a 20-year-old AEW loyal fan. What the fuck are you talking about? I don't know. Show me. Tell me the story between Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. Show me that story. Explain it to me. So the 53-year-old Dave LaGreca is excited, and obviously I am. But get the 23-year-old AEW loyal fan to be excited about this matchup. Show me the history. Give me vignettes. Show me the clips of their matches. Tell me what happened to Nigel McGuinness. I don't know. I mean, I know, but the fan doesn't know what happened with Nigel. Why did Bryan Danielson's career skyrocket where he had WrestleMania moments in front of 75,000 fans, and why is Nigel McGuinness on commentary? Explain that story to me. Tell me. Take the time to tell the story so that not only is the 53-year-old Dave LaGreca excited for this matchup because he loved Ring of Honor, but everybody who's watching AEW is excited for this matchup, Tommy.
Can I counterpoint you?
Please.
Okay.
I honestly, Tommy, hold on. I don't know what you could possibly say to counter what I just said. I don't think I've ever been more eagerly awaiting you speaking than right now, because I can't imagine how you can possibly counter what I just said. But please try.
Okay. Number one, we have Rampage and Collision to tell those stories, as well as the next Dynamite.
Bullshit. Last week, 125,000 people watched Collision. All right? Nobody, a fraction of your audience watches Rampage and Collision. So, no. Already I'm disqualifying what you just said because I don't need it being told to me on Fridays and Saturdays. It needs to be said on Wednesday, on your main show on Wednesday nights. Okay. That's when this story needs to be told. Go ahead. But continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I get it. You're very passionate about this match. Wasn't Collision on Friday?
This past Friday, yes.
So it's a change of time. You're going to see a dramatic ratings decrease.
So Rampage is usually on Friday night. So what does that tell you about that?
I understand.
Okay.
And SmackDown was a finale. Okay.
Wait, hold on. I don't buy into this SmackDown finale for what?
SmackDown was
finale for what?
The last time it was on Fox.
Oh, okay. Good point.
My God.
Good point by you. So
it's just like arguing with my dog.
Point Tommy Dreamer on that one.
Okay. So I have Rampage, Collision, and another Dynamite to get me here, correct?
Okay, 3 shows. Okay.
And then another Rampage, Collision?
Right before, well, yeah, you got Rampage, Collision this weekend, and then you got Rampage.
So I have technically, so I have a lot more than what you're saying. It's only 1 week and more representation, and I have representation on digital to tell a greater story. That would be one thing for that. The other part, I don't know if this is just a one-off. And if it is a one-off, cool, then hang on, David. If it's just a one-off, because here's the other part of it. He's an announcer. That's how he's perceived, though he's a wrestler. He had one match, but he's also an announcer. So I don't know where they're going to go with it. And Dave, if it's where they want to go with all this stuff, if you're going to continue him to have a wrestling career, I don't know. The other part, I'm not going to go say in 2024 that I had a health issue. You may have to, because then everyone's going to say, what was that health issue? And then it's going to go, is he safe to wrestle? It's going to dive into a lot of the negative narrative.
But you don't have to stay the.
You're saying what happened here, what happened there.
I want to, yes. Hey, he did not go to the WWE. He went to TNA. He became Desmond Wolfe. There's a lot of story that you could tell here. I mean, you could tell one hell of a meat and potatoes.
He was an announcer for the WWE for a long time.
That was well past the whole turn from him going to TNA and being Desmond Wolfe, and then Bryan Danielson going to WWE, right. And his career skyrocketing.
Well,
That's a big chunk of story you could tell. Compelling story that you could tell. Plus the they
probably
had with
out
Ring
of
of
the
Honor.
15 years, it's probably 2, possibly 3.
All right, then why have the match? Judging from what you're then why are you completely derailing one story to have this match at
I'm not.
Grand
I'm
Slam?
happy for the match. And I think it is I thought you were going to go, how is he getting a title shot? Like, I thought you were going to go that route.
Oh, we'll get there, but I'm more excited about. Well, more like the whole theme of the opening of the show was like, hey, Bryan Danielson can't go. He can't have a match at Grand Slam. He's out. So I'm daring you to put your number one contendership on the line against me on the show that you are supposed to be wrestling for the AEW World Championship. And then the story goes that way, and then 30 minutes later, but Bryan Danielson is going to wrestle on Grand Slam in Queens, New York. Just not the match he was supposed to have, but it's going to be a match with Nigel McGuinness. And they show the graphic, though it hasn't been officially made. They still showed the graphic. So completely just derailed that, too.
That I would agree would be a little wonky, though I've heard
Yeah.
iron lungs work really, really well lately. They speed up your recovery process. That's my only kind of, I think you're so attached to this that like this was WWE's version of ECW. You're diehard, you're loyalist, you're talking to me about this. And it was, I want it this way, but then someone else was the boss, so I couldn't have it that way. And I get it, but we had, Darby's going to wrestle Moxley, and Nigel McGuinness is going to wrestle, hopefully, Bryan Danielson. And that card,
they got to give you Nigel McGuinness, Bryan Danielson after what we saw last night.
Correct.
What are you going to do? Say Bryan Danielson said no, so we're not having that match. You got to give us that match now.
You know what? Also, I'm thinking I put that match on first, and I do the Young Bucks, Ospreay, Fletcher last to make you upset. Not really, but
it wouldn't make me upset, but
I give that match 15 minutes. Thank you. We're here, especially if it's just a one-off.
Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness could be one hell of a story that would get everybody. That's a main event for a pay-per-view. And it should be a main event for a pay-per-view because Bryan Danielson is your AEW World Champion. Why is Nigel McGuinness just automatically going to get a match against Bryan Danielson? In what world? What was in that rolled up piece of paper that he had that gives
he went to
that
Tony
match
Khan
against Bryan Danielson?
This is where I have problem with, and I have problem with why people give matches, or, I know we go to the word police when there was the rankings, all that stuff. Number one, I would always say, well, it could be champion's prerogative. The other part is he went to management and he told Tony Khan, I want to have this match. Think of all the times in wrestling, again, that you grew up watching. I just talked to Matchmaker. I'm talking Bill Watts here. I just talked to Matchmaker, whatever his fake name was, and he's making this match for next week. Hacksaw Jim Duggan's going to take on Hacksaw Butch Reed in a helmet match. Hey, I just got off the phone and the wrestlers wanted, and when they also said, it was Bill Watts' promotion and Bill Watts was over. I had no problem with it then. I don't have a problem with it now. Obviously, people do.
But they canceled one match, though. They just said that he was not able to wrestle on that show. So they went a completely different direction with the true number one contender to have a match with somebody who hasn't wrestled in a singles match in over 15 years.
Listen, I said I agree that is wonky, unless didn't Moxley say I want that title shot, and Darby
yes, he said
give me that title shot, and if not, we're going to fight for it.
He wants to wrestle him for the number one contendership,
and that happened before before this announcement, correct?
Yeah, because he was like, hey, Bryan Danielson is unable to wrestle you at Grand Slam. He can't wrestle you. He's
that's the
unable
heel also
to do
saying that. That's not an official announcement. That's the heel saying, hey, I just kicked his ass. He's not going to be there. Old school, that babyface shows up. You don't do that anymore because people would get so up in arms of, I'm not going to get this match until it happened that night. And there's also promotables, all that stuff. Dave, I get it. I understand it, but then
Wait, really quick, Tommy. Tommy, they're taking away one match to give you another match. They're taking away one match to give you this match that is Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. Correct me when I'm wrong, right? They're taking away one championship match to give you Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness, right?
Mm-hmm.
They must be doing that for a reason. The reason is, hey, man, Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness, we believe, is box office. Tony Khan was a big Ring of Honor fan. He now owns Ring of Honor. They own all that footage. Bryan Danielson, Nigel McGuinness, one of the greatest feuds, if not the greatest feud in Ring of Honor history. Classic matchups. So we're taking this match away. We can always go back to that match. But now we have an opportunity to give you Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson, which I, by the way, am completely on board. I could give a fuck less about Darby Allin and Bryan Danielson, Moxley, you giving me Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson? I'm on board, baby. I'm on board. Like I said, I'm buying a ticket. But dear God, the epic story that you could tell leading into this match, the footage, the promos back and forth between Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness, the story, as Nigel brought up, Tommy, I didn't bring it up. Nigel brought it up last night about how one guy's career skyrocketed and the other one fell flat. And he said, that should have been me. I should have been that guy. Well, tell me why. Tell me the story why. I would love to hear why Nigel McGuinness needs this match, wants validation by having this match, and telling me the story of what he just planted the seed of last night in the ring on Dynamite. Plus, you want to know something, Tommy? I agree with Nigel McGuinness. If you went back to 2008 and you told Dave LaGreca, hey, who do you think is going to be out of Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness? Who do you think the WWE is going to pick up? Who do you think is going to be main eventing a WrestleMania one day? And who's going to be one of the greatest superstars of all time and one of the greatest wrestlers of all time? My answer in 2008 would have been Nigel McGuinness. Would have been Nigel. And I remember, Tommy, in 2009, me and Doug Mortman did a show where we took specific Ring of Honor wrestlers that were on the top of the card, and we guessed about who we thought one day could be a main eventer in the WWE. Both Doug and I picked Nigel McGuinness, not Bryan Danielson. And look what Bryan Danielson is now regarded as one of the greatest wrestlers in the world. May have had one of the greatest WrestleMania moments of all time. Nigel McGuinness was Desmond Wolfe in TNA and a commentator. Tell me the fucking story, man. Tell me the story. Because I bet you most of the people watching Dynamite don't know that story. I bet you there's a big portion of the audience that's listening to Busted Open right now that doesn't know that story. Now you got one Dynamite between now and then to tell that story. And you can throw out all the rampages and collisions you want. Their A show is Dynamite. You're going to give me this match after waiting 15 years, and this is the build that you're going to give us? Shame. Shame.
Let me ask you this. Was it Bryan Danielson's fault? Bryan Danielson left the industry due to neck and head injuries, correct? Mm-hmm. Christian left the business due to a head injury. Edge left the industry because of spinal stenosis, all this stuff. Where there's an injury and it would be caused by this person or this match, I could get it where when we say this happened, but then you're like, where did their careers go differently? It's not Bryan Danielson's fault. It's nobody's fault. So I get what he was trying to build to because it's this great match, or I just sit back and when I'm going through my own personal hell, I have to watch your personal success. There's a big difference in that. Instead of blaming it on, because it's not Bryan Danielson's fault.
Listen, when two people are on equal planes and then one becomes a huge success and the other one doesn't, the one that doesn't become the huge success is going to probably point the finger of blame on the person that did become a big success. Why them and not me? Very few people look in the mirror and say, all right, what did I do wrong? Why did this person that I wrestled with and had matches and wars with, why did their career go in one direction and mine go in an opposite direction? There's going to be jealousy there. There's going to be blame there. There's going to be anger there. How do I know? Just listen to Nigel McGuinness on commentary whenever he does a match that involves Bryan Danielson. You hear the anger. And Tony Schiavone will say, well, why? Why do you hate Bryan Danielson so much? Well, now you could tell that story. This is why Nigel McGuinness hates Bryan Danielson so much. This is the exact reason why. And Tommy, they own the footage. Tony Khan owns the footage. Right now, as we speak, Tony Khan has tapes of Ring of Honor. Tapes and tapes of Ring of Honor. Final Battle. Ladder Wars. All these tapes piled up, and he's got his feet on top of it. He's sitting in his chair with his feet on top of all these piles of tapes that he now owns because he owns the Ring of Honor library. Use it. Use it to tell me this story on why I need to watch this match.